Hey, Jeff. Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. What if it were afternoon? Would you say good
We're,
morning?
oh, good afternoon, Jeff. Just in case we'll cover both coastlines. So I understand you want to start a support group to for people that are annoyed by me. Is that true?
Yeah, but you know what? It filled up so fast. I was scared, and I had to shut it down because I didn't have the space for it.
That's funny. So, on Saturday you did this really great presentation at the what's that called? ECR? Is that what it's called?
ERC, Entrepreneurial
ERC.
Resource Center. Yep.
Yeah, it's an entrepreneur resource center about how to create a clone, which I thought was a really cool. I learned some stuff. Then you started to get into the complexities of how you or the finessing of those clones, and I got all freaked out. So I'm going to try it. I don't know if I can do it, but on the way out of that class on Saturday, one of the attendees stopped me and he said that he listens to our podcast. So we have an audience of at least one for sure. I'm not sure how many people are listening.
Just get Dan to listen. We'd have two.
Exactly. We listen to it, but I don't know about anybody else. But anyway, he said that he listens to it and he really likes it. However, he thinks we should focus more on the twisted, bent, and exhausted part of why we call this podcast that. And so I thought today we could maybe address what we mean by twisted. And I know you have some kind of opening statement about that too. We can use as a little piece for a pitch online. So go ahead.
I do.
Don't you? I sent it to you.
I guess. Okay, I'm going to read this because Leslie just sent it to me. We're trying a new format. She just wants to wing it, and so here we go.
Drives him crazy.
God. I'm a systems person, right? So
So am I.
discovered I'm a
So
systems
am I. But
person.
podcasts don't need to be that tight. You watch the good ones; they just have a conversation.
The best ones have a system. But anyway, here's an opening. Have you ever looked at your day and wondered, how did this become my job? You started a business for freedom, flexibility, and control, but somehow you're answering messages during dinner, fixing employee mistakes, and rearranging your entire life around everyone else's emergencies.
That's right.
That's what we mean by twisted.
Right. So, I want to talk about today about things like twisted priorities or twisted boundaries. Twisted priorities means like we, as a small business owners, we allow a sense of urgency to drive what we're doing. Instead of having a plan, I just said we don't need a plan for the podcast, but instead of having a plan, right, we let things become overcome by events. We're running from fire to fire. Instead of being proactive, we're being reactive. And that's what twisted priorities are. We need to be able to clearly define what our priorities are. That's not to say, though, that we're not going to be flexible, right? We have to sometimes be flexible because things come up in the day to day when you run a business. But if you can't set your priorities and try to stick to them, that's going to find you kind of all wrapped up. Would you agree?
I would, and I want to sprinkle something in there, whether it fits or not. It feels good to get it out. I read. Actually, I was listening to a someone that I follow, and he was explaining how we will hire people to do certain tasks, and then we find ourselves doing a lot of their work. And he said when somebody walked in his office and asked him a question on how to do the job, he basically said this is why I hired you. You need to figure it out. If I have to do your job, you don't have one. And I'm like, wow, I like that idea because I find myself answering questions that if my staff were just a little more creative and would go beyond the content layer of a book, that they would find out their answers. If they would say, like, I've given them all the information they need to know to do what we need to do. And so sometimes for me, that's what gets me twisted. It's not my clients asking questions so much. It's my staff asking questions. I'm saying, wait a minute. Hello, Jeff, you hired them to do this. And if you've given them the tools to do their job, and then they come back to you and ask you every little question, why am I still paying them? Why don't I just do the job? Because I did it myself anyway.
Well, exactly. And I was saying no at first because I didn't agree with the part of that's why I hired you. You figure it out. but I didn't realize you meant it in the context you just explained. I was thinking,
It's
that
another
we
reason I'm
wouldn't
twisted, I keep getting interrupted.
I was thinking that you meant that we don't, define the expectations, right? That you figured out, but you already you have I know because 'cause we've had this conversation, that you have defined the expectations and laid out perfectly clearly, what the process is and what their scope of responsibilities is, and if they're still not doing it, that can get us twisted up, right?
Yes, yes, and, sometimes it's that whole thing of you feel it starts to make me question myself. Like, I know I have given this person, or let's just say it's a fictitious staff member, I've given them the information of exactly what the outcome's supposed to be, what the steps are, how to troubleshoot it, and yet they come back to me when I'm like, "Wait a second, just push the start button." "Oh, yeah, that's it. Oh, okay." Now it's like, come back, "Okay, now what after that?" I'm like, damn, this is yeah, that gets me twisted because all those interruptions, as we know from the attention process, is for us to get into deep thinking, it takes us about 40 minutes. And if we're interrupted and we've been in some deep thinking, like you're working on a strategy for something, or you're writing a proposal for a business, and you've in there, and somebody walks in and says, "Hey, can I just ask you a real quick question?" That is really thrown you off, and now it takes all that time to get back at that same deep level. That's the troubling part.
Right. I jumped on my husband a couple of times because I've been deep in thought on trying to work something out, or the new marketing strategy, for example, that we've implemented for the business. And he'll come in and want to talk to me about something that is not urgent. If there's blood or water, okay, you can interrupt me. But if there's not, leave me alone until I take a break because my head gets in there. And then it's hard to go back to what you were talking about. And that does particularly get me twisted up. I'm not so, strict on things that I can't be interrupted, but there are occasions when you're really deep in thought that becomes difficult. And I know for you, you've been really frustrated by, the staff that refuses to take ownership. I think that's part of it, is that they're not taking ownership of the tasks that they've been assigned with. They're still I have found in my own business that when people refuse to take ownership, it is because they're afraid of making a mistake and they're intimidated
Mm.
by what we've asked them to do. And once I always have this come to call it come to Jesus meeting, but I say sit them down and say, "Look, you're capable of doing this. You can't, as long as you don't burn a house down or lose a key, we'll work out whatever happens. Take the initiative and go work on it." And sometimes it helps and sometimes it doesn't. And when it doesn't, then obviously you have to make the decision about, do I keep this person or not? It is not worth it to have them if you have to do all their work for them.
Yeah. Um, I like the idea of that take ownership, and I try to give my staff a tremendous amount of leeway and leash, if you will. And I'll give you a perfect example. We're doing a new process when it comes to making videos, and you heard me talk about this on Saturday. Is we're using a tool that allows our staff now, any staff member with the proper instructions, to become a video creator slash editor without having to have a lot of video editing or creative background. And so I sent this over to two staff members, and I got information back on Saturday afternoon from one of them, and he just said, "Hey, I am so excited that you're offering me to do this." He's one of my staff members that lives in the Philippines, and he says, "I'm so excited that you're making this offer to me." He said, "I can't wait to get going." Yesterday, he sent me and he said, "I've done these videos. Let me know what you think." They were perfect.
Hmm.
And I did send him tutorials to watch. He took the time to watch the tutorials, obviously, and the outcome was exactly what I'm looking for. I did make a couple of minor things that I said, "Hey, when you're going forward, do this." It was more of a branding thing, but there was nothing wrong with the videos. And then this morning, I get one back from my other gentleman who lives in another part of the world, And he said, again, I'm really excited. I've started this. He said, let me just ask this one question. I just want to clarify this one area because he does more long form video. The other gentleman was going to do the short form video. And he just wanted me to make sure that he made sure that he was doing the right ones. But he said, I'm so excited. This is really going into the future. He said, thanks for bringing me along. And I'm like, that's what I'm looking for.
Right.
And
And that's what we should expect as business owners. But you're right that when people do not perform to the level that you hired them for, and we end up taking up the slack, we as the business owners, then we do find ourselves twisted in a knot. And so we really, that leads right into the second piece of this way that we are having problems with being twisted, and that is boundaries, right? Um, when we allow our clients and our employees and our vendors, can you hear that weird noise? Or is that just me?
just you.
Okay. Um, when we allow them to have access to us at all hours of the day and night, then we become twisted up and resent this ongoing thing. I'm super guilty of this because I fire off emails at all hours of the day and night. I've been trying to change over to schedule them for the morning. Don't deliver before 7 or 8 a.m. of the morning so that I can still do them as I come across them. But setting boundaries as to when we as business owners are available, I think can be really helpful. And I know neither you nor I are really super good at doing that. I think you're a little better than me, but I look at email 24/7. And I think don't you actually have times where you check your email?
Yeah, actually, now what I've done is I've created an AI agent that actually checks all my email, and then they basically separate it into a folder for me, and then twice a day I get notifications. So they're checking it throughout the day, but they're only giving me I'm going to call it the hot items, and along with suggested responses. So I just have to check that AI folder a couple times during the day, and that's given me a lot less to worry about and look at. So you can do that. That's not, again, it's something that can be set up. It sounds complicated. It's not, but it certainly helps. And that frees up time. Now, at that same thing, at that same breath, Leslie, it takes training to stop doing that.
Right.
Right. Because it's like the old Pavlov's dog, the ringing the bell, salivate, ringing the bell, salivate, even though I'm not hungry. And the same thing. It's like, oh, I have a second, check my email. Have a minute, check my email. Oh, I'm going to the bathroom, check my email. Maybe that was a little bit too personal.
TMI. Yeah, TMI.
But anyway, we have to start breaking those habits. So like, okay, now
Right.
I need to replace with something else because we'll fill that space. But usually we have to fill it with something, a new habit.
Right. I have you ever had, I know you've been doing that for a while with the AI agent checking the email. Is that working well? I mean, have they missed anything that you wish they hadn't?
No, in fact, probably they catch things better than I do because, like this morning, I was looking at and the same way, I probably gosh, I don't know, it's 11:30 now. Probably by 9:30 this morning, I had over 200 emails come in.
Oh, yeah,
And
easy.
and so it's real easy to say, wow, that one that came in at 6, it's already on page 3
Right.
or page 4. So it's tough to get to. It doesn't miss any of them.
That's
So it
good.
helps. Yeah, so it
I
helps.
Yeah, I try to connect my Outlook to a AI agent, but I had some difficulties with that, and I don't know why.
Outlook's a
Uh,
bear.
I'm sure it's because it's Outlook, because that makes everything harder. Gmail would probably be easier to do, but
It would. It would. And since Outlook is a Microsoft product, you could probably use Gemini
oh, yeah,
to
probably.
hook that up. That would probably be a little less difficult. But think about Outlook is more security based, and so not that it's easy to break into Gmail, but yeah, it's a little bit more for corporate email type of things, and so the security measures are a little tighter. So it's sometimes a little more challenging.
Okay. Then
Yep.
we're gonna talk about twisted roles, right?
They're
We're
my favorite
the
because I like it with a little sugar on it, those little twisted rolls. Is
not
that
those
right?
kind of roles.
Oh, I'm sorry.
LES, not LLS.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, dad jokes just don't work for you. That's art's bound bailiwick.
Right.
Twisted roles, and what I mean by that one is that as basically the CEO of our business, right? Um, we have certain responsibilities. We wanna may or may not wanna be 100% the face of our business, but we shouldn't be out there doing what we call frontline work, right? When we own the business. For example, last week I had to do several home checks because I had somebody on vacation and everybody was slammed because it's summer. And so I had to go out and do home checks. Really, that is not the best thing for me to be doing, right? I'm much better served um, being the cheerleader for my business, writing policies and procedures, going out and doing marketing and networking in person. Those things are redesigning our marketing approach. Those kinds of things are what a CEO does. It is not doing the work that you hired. And I see this problem a lot with the people I coach because either they're still small-ish and they've already the biggest challenge for small business owners is when they start out doing the work and running the company, right? Is they become the face of their business to their clients, and then their clients don't want to let go of them.
Yep.
And so everybody feels this responsibility of, I can't walk away from this client because they're going to be upset. And what we have to do is understand what the role is of the business owner and how do we wean those clients to somebody new. Just like with your business, right? You've created tools so that you can offload some of what you are the face of the bit. I remember back in the day where you were doing all the video filming, all the editing, all the script writing. Often you were on camera with the person. Remember we did X's and O's 1,000 years
Yeah.
ago.
Yeah.
So you were often on camera with the person that was doing the videos. And so today you don't have to do almost none of that, right?
It's rare. It's rare.
Yeah. Partly because tools have improved, and partly because I think over the years, you and I in our coaching have realized that you have better, you have more to bring, more value to your business by staying as the CEO and not trying to do all that, hire people to do that work and you manage those people and you grow your business and you do the marketing or you come up with new tools for people to use, right? So I think that understanding the role of the business owner and not having the correct one really twists a lot of people up.
Does that, you mentioned about when we first start out in business. I mean, is that the exception of like, hey, you know what? Let's hypothetically say when you started your business 20 years ago, you had to do the home checks.
Right?
And I'm just saying because you've talked to a lot of people who are new or they've been in it 3 or 4 years and they're still small
Yeah.
enough that they're still doing some of the day to day.
Yeah.
And I think about that. I'm like, is that a bad thing, or is that something you say, hey, let's set a goal that in the first 24 months of my business that I'm only doing 1% or 10% of all home checks. In other words, I've hired people to do that, knowing that that's your runway. You've got this, and everything you're doing on a daily basis is to get to that 10% or zero, whatever it is.
I
What are
think
your
I
thoughts?
I think that a lot of business owners, people, when they go into business for themselves initially, need to really look at what are they trying to create. Because for me, as you know, when I got my first client, I hired somebody to do the work
Right.
right away because I wanted that to create that structure and hierarchy of I run the company, you take care of the clients, so that my clients would understand that. Now, I worked really hard to build the dependence of the client on the business and not on the individual doing the work. That's really important. However, what I see is people think about the money too much. And I know we go into business for ourselves for a variety of reasons, one of which is to make an income for ourselves, right? But if if that's all you're doing it for, then you're really just making a job for yourself, and you need to acknowledge that and say, "Okay, this is gonna be my role in this business. I am gonna work with the clients, and I'm not gonna try to grow." And instead, what I see is happening is that whether they like it or they not, the business does grow, and they exceed their capacity for taking care of the clients. And then when you try to go in and help them implement systems or structure or procedures or any number of tools to make their business more efficient and more profitable, they resist it because they don't want to give up the client piece. So I think you really need to make that decision early on. What am I trying to accomplish? And what is my piece of that?
So you're saying there's an absolute no. When you start your business, I can't be the face of the customer for the customer. I have to immediately move into the CEO role.
I'm not saying that. I think everybody should play every part of every business so that you understand what it is. You know, I was lucky enough to have a very strong background in business, so I understood how things worked. But even with that, like this last week when I went out and did home checks, I realized that there are some common issues that come up for every home, and I need a procedure for that. And I actually came back and wrote one, and then, when we have our staff meeting in a week or so, I will review that with them because there are certain things that happen at all homes, and people need to know how to take care of those, right? And I'm talking about the executive errands business and not the concierge business solutions because, I got both of those. Um, so it's like that undercover boss thing. You should go out and work every piece of your business so that you understand how it works because you can't lead people if you don't know the challenges they face.
I think here's a myth as you were explaining that and going through that process is I think a myth is, I'm busier, so I must be growing. And that couldn't be further from the
Yeah,
truth
no, that's not.
because when you're busy and you're so busy taking care of, building widgets or stuffing envelopes, if you will, metaphorically, of course, is things fall through the crack. The callback, the meeting, the invoice, whatever it is, following up on the work that your staff has done to make sure it's up to standard. Those things, while you'll be very, very busy, those things fall through the cracks. And it's almost like that example of, if a sink is leaking under, if excuse me, a pipe is leaking under your sink and it's one drop every 13 seconds, the first few drops are not going to be a big deal.
No,
It's that when it goes into hours and then days, and all of a sudden you open it up and the cupboard handle falls off because it's absorbed all that moisture.
right?
And so that's why I think sometimes, Leslie, busy is a sign that you're not growing, you're probably suffering somewhere, and you need to get yourself out of the day to day and into that CEO or director role. I mean, I think of this as like, you would never fly, and you fly a lot, you'd never fly from here to London. And the next thing you know, you look up and the captain of the plane is serving you nuts.
Yeah.
It's not
I
going to
hope
happen.
not. I
His
hope
job
not.
or her job is to make sure you get there safely.
Right.
And we sometimes don't even know who that person is. We hear their voice, but they are out there. And it's not like if you don't know the captain, are you still flying to London?
Yeah.
Of course you are. You trust them. And the
Yeah.
staff is taking care of you, and you're getting your peanuts and your water or your whatever you're having to drink and go on. I think sometimes we think we have to be the entire crew. Does that
Well,
make sense?
yes, because that leads right into the next piece of why people get twisted as when they own businesses, and that's twisted responsibility, right?
Twisted
Be
responsibilities.
Yes, because you think that every issue that comes up in your business, you have to be the one to solve. And the only time that is true is when you're just you and there isn't anybody else working with you, right? So if you have a support staff, then you have to learn how to let go, which also goes back to boundaries. All this stuff you can see is twisted up together.
Well, yeah, let me ask you a question about this
Sure.
because, a lot of times, especially in your business, in executive errands,
Mhm,
concierge business solutions, or excuse me, concierge services, don't a lot of people start out with that and it's just them?
mhm.
Because they're like, they love what they do. They're going out there servicing a few clients, and then they have to either A, stop growing because they can't take on any more. And I see this in marketing business all the time. Is like, if I grow, it means I have to hire 7 new writers and 2 new videographers, and the only thing anybody's gonna make any money are those people, and my headache is only gonna grow. So I'm not gonna do it, or I'm gonna do it myself. My question is how do you get past that?
Well, again, a lot of that comes down to what are you trying to create? If you're doing a job for yourself, but see, here's what happens. If you're doing a job, then you do have a limit, a limited. There's some kind of constraint on your time. You get 24 hours in a day. You can only work so many hours, and if you have a family, then you have to be really careful about that as well, right? So, so they don't lose that balance between the business and your family and your health, your own mental health. Um, but what happens is that the money is generally not enough, particularly people who undervalue their time. When people are starting businesses undervalue their time, I see this a lot. Then they can't make, the amount of money they can make is limited. Okay, if I'm charging $10 an hour and I worked 20 hours a day, yeah, I'm making $200 a day. If I'm charging $50 an hour and I work 20, I'm making $1,000 a day, right? So your ability to earn is limited by your ability to work. Nobody can work 20 hours a day sustainably because you just can't. You can't do it. Your health can't do it. So eventually you go, okay, the word on the street is good about my business. I'm solving problems. If you're like me, you have a hero complex. I like to solve everything and make it better. My daughter pointed that out to me, that the reason I like impossible things to do is because I have a hero complex, and I can't get that out of my head. She's not wrong. But uh, you have to bring in help. You bring in help, and then still do all the responsibilities and make your staff answer to you or run by you anything they're going to do, defeats the purpose of having staff. Right? You have to instill some ownership in them. You've got to empower them with the ability to take on this responsibility that you're trying to release so that you have more bandwidth to keep growing or to keep working or to be the face of your business if that's what you want. I have learned I learned this last season that I still need to go visit with existing clients once in a while, have a lunch with them, talk to them on the phone, remind them I'm still around, because I've gone so far the other way of taking myself out of the face of the business to the client, not the face of the business to the community and the networking and the marketing, right? So, you don't wanna lose those relationships. So it's a real, um this is, I always say, sticky wicket. There's a line that you gotta kinda balance and walk, a tightrope, if you will, of between being the face and letting people have responsibilities. And so we can get really, and I keep using the word twisted because that's what we're talking about, twisted up, and we're trying to solve everything and not letting people do it, which then goes back to the issue that people won't, um try to solve problems because they know you're just gonna come in, step in, and do it yourself anyway.
Well, it sounds like we're especially specifically twisted responsibilities. Like if you give somebody a job, and I've worked some corporate, but I remember one time I was in my office and the light bulb went out, and
Mm.
you know, I'm going to fix it. And I'm on a chair about ready to get the light bulb out, and someone of my staff ran in and says, "You can't do that." I'm like, "What do you mean I can't do it?" She said, "It's not in your job description. That's, that's maintenance, and they have to come and do it because, you're not supposed to do that." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" So it took half a day to get somebody up there to change the light bulb, and I'm like, "Wow." We used to make jokes about that when I was a kid. Um,
Yeah. How many
And
people?
so one thing, but the good thing about that is if you define someone's job and their responsibilities, then we have to uncouple from that.
Exactly
And
right.
we
That's
just
a
have
good word.
to
Yeah.
yeah, we just have to say, okay, you know what? Now I've given that responsibility to you. I'm still going to overlook the results that you're getting, but I'm no longer going to do the hammering with. I'm no longer going to pound nails. I'm just going to see if the nails went in properly and let you do that. Does that make
Right.
sense?
Yeah, and I encourage people always when you start adding staff to encourage them to come to you with a solution when there's an issue, right? And I've done that for 30 years. I mean, this is not a new concept. If you're going to come to me with a problem, you need to come also with some kind of solution or a couple of options for solutions so that I know you've thought through the issue and that you tried to solve it yourself.
Yeah.
There will always be times when the solution is so murky that you really do need somebody with more experience or who has lived longer in this business to make a decision. But for you to come to me with an issue and not have any solution is a delegation of responsibility and not accepting your role, your ownership of this process.
I
Right.
I,
So,
I couldn't agree
yeah.
with that more. Yeah.
Yeah. So bring me a solution. It may not be the one we go with, and don't take that personally. It's not about personal. In my industry, there are so many things to consider: who the client is, what their budget tolerance is, how long they've been with us, how much do they trust us, how do they like things to be done? There's all these things to consider when you're making a decision about something. And so sometimes it's not black and white. And I'm sure you see that in your business as well. You've got clients, you're doing video. How many times have you done videos for me or done my newsletter, formatted my newsletters? And I've said, I don't change it this, just this, because I and here's why I want you to change it, you know? I think Mia, who does my newsletters, the publication of my newsletters, came back and wanted to do one for me, and I needed her to change one sentence because what we were talking about had already the the calendar of it had passed.
Mm.
So instead of saying it like it was upcoming, I need to say it like it had happened. So I had her change that. Those are things that you can bring to somebody and say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And I think this, and then your responsibilities stay more aligned with the person that's trying to do them and with what you're trying to accomplish as the business owner. But boy, you can get really wrapped up in it if you try to manage everything yourself.
100%. What's the next one?
Well, the next one is really twisted identity, and I can't tell you how many times I have talked to people about this, and I think you and I have had this conversation as well. For those of you listening or watching that don't know, I am also Jeff's coach, um, in business, and quite often he's my coach as well. We kind of bounce things off of each other. But twisted identity means that people their self-worth is tied up in the success or failure of the business.
Mm.
If something goes wrong, it's a personal failure. And, that's how they look at it, and that they base how they perceive themselves based on the business, and you cannot do that. I counsel people I wish I had a nickel for every time I've had this conversation with a business owner that says, "Hey, you need to create in your mind 2 people." And I'm not saying civil level people. Well, you know that because 'cause you're old enough, but a lot of people probably don't know what that means, multiple personalities. What I mean is that you have to have a professional you and your regular you.
Mm.
And the professional you is the one that, has pride in the business and that runs the business and makes the decisions for the business and blah, blah, blah. But the personal you is separate from that business, and that your happiness in life is not dependent on what that business does, right? So you have to untwist your identity, uncouple, I love that word, uncouple your identity from the business. It is not you. As a matter of fact, as an example, I created this, resume for my business. And so when I would belong to charities or was set on boards or had newspaper articles written and I was interviewed, I positioned all of that as the company. The company participated in those charities. The company belonged to the Chamber of Commerce. The company had articles written about it. Yes, I'm the one that does the work, I'm the one that goes, I'm the one they talk to, but it is the business personality that that's about. It is not about me personally. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I just saw a great interview with a business owner, and the interviewer was trying to give accolades to that business owner, and he kind of said that. He said, "No, you don't understand." He said, "My team did this." He said, "I couldn't have done it by myself." And he said, "This is a company wide event. Congratulations. It's not
Right,
about me." And
right.
so he did that, and I thought, "Wow, that's pretty." Yeah, I thought, "Oh, that's pretty cool, but you should take a little credit." Now he did go on and say, "And I thank you for pointing it out about me, but it wasn't me. It was my team."
Right, and if you've cultivated a strong team and you allow them to have ownership and they've been empowered to make decisions that you have faith in them to do, right? A, you're not twisted up in that part of the business, and B, it is a team effort because you taught them, you trust them, you educated them, they understand the expectations. All of that is key to get the business to have its own identity.
Mhm.
And yes, you are a big part of it, but you also have your personal identity and who you are as a human being and how you live in the world as a human being. And those 2 should not cross, right? You gotta keep them separate, otherwise your self-worth can go down the toilet. You have a bad year, you've seen me where you've had to talk me off a ledge on occasion because something didn't go the way I thought it should go, and there is always a grand plan.
Yeah.
Right? Everything happens for a reason. So you have to trust in that, but there are days and weeks and sometimes months where that seems hard to do, but you have to do it.
Yeah. Perfect. Next.
Do you have trouble with that? I've never really thought of you. Well, yeah, to a certain degree. We went through a period where your self-worth was tied up in the business to some degree because of prior issues in other businesses, not because of what's happening in this business per se, but from hanger on feelings from other issues, right?
Yeah, I think for me, it's not as difficult to disconnect, and change, um, only because as an athlete and competed in golf and whatnot, is
Show
I
them
did
your
have
hand. See, pickleball injury.
I did have to move away from, "Oh, I'm Jeff, the golf professional, a professional golfer, and now I'm just Jeff." And, because if not, you could have a bad score and drag that into dinner, drag it into your sleep, and drag it onto the next tee, or next morning on the first tee. You can't do that. You have to leave it there like, "Hey, my score is not me. Yes, I shot that score, but it's not me." So I think maybe years of that helped me understand I need to step away. I do have one little issue with something because I'm also trained as a public speaker, and one of the things that was really driven home is when a public speaker is one way on stage and another way off stage, and the goal was to be the same person no matter what. And the reason they said that is because I watch you on stage and you seem so nice and outgoing, and then when I see you in person, you're just a shithead. And I'm
Oh,
like,
no,
wow,
no, no, no.
you know what
Don't
I'm
say
saying?
you to look at me.
That's just an example. And they said, be consistent. If so that whether you're on or off the stage, in this case, that you're just that person. And so I
Yeah.
try to take on that as well, but this is a little different from the twisted identity we're talking about within our business.
Yeah, I mean, you wanna go through life as a good human being regardless, right? But there are 2 separate identities when you are a business owner, right? So you can still be nice. It's funny because one of my employees said to me a couple of weeks ago that because he's still new, he's still learning, but he's doing a fantastic job, right? Fantastic. And has really stepped up quickly on everything that he's doing. And he says to me, I really appreciate how nice you are when I make a mistake or when you have to explain something to me. And I said to him, well, it's good you know me now because 5 years ago, 5 you can remember the days where I got a lot too tense, too, my own too twisted, because even though I teach these concepts, I wasn't living them for some of the time. Even when I was back in aerospace, they used to call me pushy bitch, in aerospace as a compliment, by the way, but I was so intense all the time that gets exhausting and it does twist you up. So, yeah, this is one thing where you need to have 2 separate identities, at least where your self-worth is concerned,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
Yes, you love
it'll affect your home life, it'll affect your social life, and
it
vice
affects everything.
versa. Yeah,
Well,
you've
look
got
at the housing market. I mean, my husband still struggles with, he was in the process of building homes in Salton Sea, and when the housing market crashed, he lost a lot of money and he still thinks about that. He's still not happy about that. But it wasn't personally his, and it happened to everybody.
yeah.
So you have to learn that this was the period of time we were going through, and it affected everybody. I mean, I lost quite a bit of money myself at that time. It just happens. So you gotta separate your identity. So the next one after this is twisted thinking. And I have been guilty of this over the years. I don't know if you have, but I know I have. If you need to feel needed all the time,
Mm.
sometimes that can become your measurement of success. How much people need me, right? And that is
Doesn't
twisted
matter to me.
thinking. Yeah, you don't care, right?
I
But to me, it used to matter. It's that hero complex thing. You need to be needed. And some of that comes down to self-worth as well. So you have to evaluate, all this stuff is twisted together. I keep saying twisted. All of these things work together as part of the mindset of being a business owner. But if you feel like you're not happy unless somebody comes to you, it's like your kids, you know, we all want to be needed by our children. And then when they grow up but our goal is to keep them alive and teach them how to be independent thinkers and live in the world. Once you do that and they don't need you, it's a rude awakening.
Mm.
Same with running a business. Your business is your kid, just like anything else. And if you teach it to run on its own, which is what I focus on these days, is how to get operational independence, and you don't need to be needed for every single little thing, that can be quite disturbing to some people.
Well, it reminds me of that situation where you see somebody in their life and they start giving all their stuff away. And by
Mhm.
giving all their stuff away, they become freer because they don't have the responsibility of taking care of that piece of art or that or this, that, and the other. And I'm not saying give all your stuff away, but the less responsibility you have, the freer you become. And it sounds like when you're talking about this twisted thinking, when you do that properly, not twisted the other way around, it sounds like that is a freeing opportunity. Is that fair?
Y Yeah, it really is. In fact, you reminded me of a story when I moved from I was in Virginia and I moved to Texas for 10 months, and then I left Texas and came back to California. And when I left Texas, I sold my house furnished. I sold my car. I sold the motorcycle I owned. I sold everything I had. I came out here with 50 boxes and money in the bank, and that's all I had. And I moved into a furnished place and I went and bought a car so I could get around. And I have never felt as free as I did in that period of time,
Mm.
right? Because I had nothing. Clutter and stuff is suffocating. And it's the same in your business. If your business needs you 24/7, you begin to feel suffocated and you begin to feel resentful. And that is not why you started a business.
No, true,
Do
true.
you ever feel like that at all?
I think I would be wrong to say, no, I don't feel like that at all because that probably is not accurate. There are times where I do probably feel that way. Um, I think we've all had that. I mean, I just remember back in my day when I had some challenges. I was in the real estate industry. I was an investor, and I had to I had to pull into a safe cove. If you think about a ship, sometimes you have to pull into a cove and let the storm pass. And during that time, it's like regrouping. It's almost like saying, hey, my electric car needs to be plugged in. There's nothing wrong with it. It just needs some energy. And so that was my plug-in. And so I think we all need that from time to time. I think now I do a better job of nurturing and creating those safe opportunities that I don't feel like I do it much, but I probably do. I probably just hit, I monitor it better and can get in and out of that cove faster, and maybe it's not so noticeable.
Yeah, and one of the things I would like to offer is that because we're all subject to downturns in the economy, uh, pandemics that limit what you're able to do, political unrest. I mean, there's all kinds of things that happen in life that affect us as small business owners, right? And one of the things with your thinking is that you cannot let that make you raise the white flag or throw in the towel. There's two metaphors right there. You don't because what I do, and I do this consistently, and I encourage other people to consider it, is that when things slow down for whatever reason, or there's some kind of pause in the society, I create other things. I look at what does my marketing materials look like? Is my target client going to change? Can I write tips and hints booklets for people? Should I do some new videos or webinars? I'm constantly looking for how can I create new avenues for people to be successful in their own businesses, and in my companies as well. What can I implement in my company to make it better? And so, people shouldn't I mean, I can remember during the housing crisis, going to networking events, particularly the chamber. That's what sticks in my mind, chamber mixers, and people all crying, not physically, but verbally, how bad business was and how their businesses were suffering. And people would ask me, and I would say, mine's great. You know, I grew 30% this year. Now, 30% of 0 is still pretty low when you're just getting started. We're talking 20, 15 years ago, 15 years ago. But if you talk that it's positive, if you talk that it's going well, and if you project new concepts, ideas, products, if you stay in a creativity mode, your thinking will unravel and you won't be caught up in the negativity that can kill so many businesses.
You know, I take just a slightly different approach to this because I think, and I want to just plus what you said is we can't get here thinking and doing what we've always done. We
Right.
have there's a gap there, and yours is through creativity. Mine is through exposure of education. Like
Right.
I'm
That's true.
constantly learning things and I'm constantly listening to things. And I keep going back, and you've heard as I apologize for saying this again, but I keep going back to Gretzky saying, skate to where the puck is going, not to where it is. And it's almost like if I don't change my mindset, then my outcome won't change. And what I'll tend to do, or a person will do, is it will tend to stagnate, stop growing. And it's almost like if you think of a body of water that has
Mhm.
no inlet or outlet, it will eventually die and it will have a
Salty.
bad odor. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so my thing is there are inlets and outlets. And so sometimes when I'm bringing new things in, I'm also less letting old things out, like, that doesn't work anymore. So to
Yeah.
me, that I think that's a nice opportunity for you as a business owner says, "Yeah, my thinking is a little twisted because I think that I'm going to those chambers and I am getting sucked into that, yeah, things are really bad right now." Instead of saying, "Wait a minute, I need to surround myself with people who are thinking, I've got a 30% growth. Let me go to lunch with Leslie and find out what
Right.
she's thinking. Even if she's making this crap up,
I
maybe
was at the
that's my
time.
first wrong that I need to grab a hold of." So I
Right.
love constantly being exposed to what is going on now and future. What's going on in the next 3 to 5 years? What's in AI, it's like, what's going on in the next 3 to 5 minutes?
Minutes,
And
yeah.
yeah. And so for me, that keeps me fresh. It's almost like saying, if you keep driving towards the horizon, your journey will not end because you'll never reach the horizon, but you can go there with zest and gusto.
Well, and yeah, and that your approach requires, and I guess mine too, requires some vision, right? You are definitely a visionary, right? You can see where the technology is headed way before other people. And because you're constantly doing education and because you're constantly innovating, you're way far ahead on AI stuff than most people. Way, way, way far ahead. I'm meeting more and more people that take advantage now of Grok and Chat and Genesis and all the different the basic tools. HeyGen is a great one. I know you really promote HeyGen. They're taking advantage of the tools more than they used to, but I'm
Mhm.
also seeing people innovate in how they use them. And again, if you constantly need to be needed, you get wrapped up in your shorts and you cannot have that vision, right? You have to allow other people to do what they need to do and to understand who you are. I mean, kind of, again, this stuff is all wrapped up together. So it's kind of hard to talk about one without the others. But twisted thinking can really limit what you're able to accomplish in business.
I think before we jump to the next one, or if that's the last one,
I
I
have one
think,
more.
okay, I think, one of the things we need to recognize is and maybe we haven't said this, but what are some of the trouble signs? Because it's one of those things. It's like, hey, I know I'm on the wrong road if all of a sudden I went from pavement to dirt. That's a
Yeah.
clue. I took
Yeah.
the wrong path.
Right.
And just without getting too deep in the weeds, are there some, when we start having twisted thinking, are there some telltale signs of going, oh crap, there's a clue that I'm going down this road and it's non-productive for me?
Well, one of them is that you require your staff, everybody to come to you for solutions
Mm.
and that your personality also believes that your success or failure depends on how many times people come to you,
Okay.
whether that's conscious or it's not. If you still have such a tight chokehold on your business that everything has to come through you, and that can also be not staff, it can also be clients, right? That if you put your clients in a position that they need to check with you constantly about anything, that's a bad thought process. It's bad to be in that position because it so limits you. I mean, one of the things about being a business owner is that you want to have the universe will give you whatever you want,
Mhm.
right? And if you're clear on where you're going with this business, it makes it so much easier. I've said this a million times. It's okay to create a job for yourself. Understanding though that you're going to be limited by your capacity to do the work. Your income and your number of clients, how big your company will get will be limited by what you're physically able to do.
But that's okay if that's the
It's totally
mindset you
okay.
start with, right?
Yeah, that's totally okay. Some people do that. They're happy they make maybe 40, 50, 60,000 a year, 70,000 a year because they take all the profits. They don't put stuff back into their business. They just operate with what they have and whatever apps they can glue together. And then they feel like they're making a good living. They have autonomy. They're able to do what they want when they want. Now, the downside of that is that if you go on vacation, the business stops, right? Because it's only you. So, but then some people say they tell their clients, "Hey, I'm gonna be gone for this week. I'll pick you back up when I get back." And that's okay.
Mhm.
It would drive me nuts, but it's okay if that's how you wanna run your business. On the other hand, if you wanna grow, you have to learn how to delegate and, uh, um, communicate and share expectations and allow people to take ownership. And you have to fight these twisted uh, uh, characteristics, personality traits that can really limit you, right?
Gotcha.
So, yeah. So the last one, were you done with that one? Or no
Yep.
one else? Okay. So the last one for today, whoops, I hit the wrong button, is twisted relationships. And that is when you allow your business and your focus on your business to impact your family, right? So that you only get time for mental rejuvenation or self care or um, balance with whatever little is remaining of you. And that really hurts both your family, your life, and your business because you cannot they talk about work-life balance all the time, and I kinda think it's kind of a misnomer. I don't really believe there's such a thing as work-life balance in the context of how people talk about it. But I do believe that you have to make sure that you carve out enough for yourself. It's kinda like I use the puzzle metaphor. You need to know what that picture is on the box
Mhm.
before you build the puzzle, and the business is your puzzle, and so what are you trying to achieve? And if it's more time with your grandchildren, it's more time with your spouse, it's traveling, it's more time to play pickleball so you can break your wrist more often. Whatever it is, I'm gonna tease you forever about breaking your wrist in pickleball. But Dan's yelling at me from the other room about something about your wrist. I don't know what it is. So, whatever, is your goal in life and whatever your people start a business for a multitude of reasons, but what's the picture on the box? Why are you starting this business? And then being able to make sure that you get that on a regular basis, because if you allow I'm a workaholic, but I always make time for Dan, always. Even if it means I start at 6 in the morning and I stop at 2 and spend a few hours with him, make his dinner, watch the TV with him, have a conversation, and then go back to work at night, you know? Even if I do that, and there have been years where I've done that, um, is better than saying, "Well, I've got 15 minutes left over at the end of the week, and you can have that." That's not good. I don't think you've ever had that. You've been pretty balanced on your stuff.
Well, no, not really. I mean, I try to. I love what I do, so and I'm always like trying to do it better. And so, like we go away and we try to take a month off every year to go away, and it's a month off for my wife. It's not a month for me, so I try to work from 5 to 9 in the morning, and then you know we go do our thing, and then I'll check back in throughout the day. It's not always easy to do because sometimes 9 o'clock, bleeds into 9:30 or 10. And so, I have to be aware of that. That I have to, when she says we're going on vacation, I'm gonna go, no, no, no. I said, we're just changing locations. Because for me, I'm still working because of what I do.
But she's
And
not. She's not.
no, because she has a career that has done really, really well. She's done six figures in her business for many years as a hairstylist, and she has a salon. And I know when we early on, I said, "Well, why don't you hire more people?" No, I don't want to. I don't want to manage anybody. And I keep saying, "But what if they were just like you? Wouldn't you be easy to manage?" And now she has a couple of gals working in her salon, and she does see the benefits of like, "Hey, I'm going on vacation, but I'm still making money." Yahoo! Because she get ticked at me because I would still get paid even though I was away. My business was still making money. And so she gets a little bit of that now, but for the most part, no, she's one of these people when she closes the door, she comes home, she's off. There's nothing. And so that's a cool mindset at times. I wish I had. I don't have that very often. So
Well, and that's kind of the pitfall of working from home, right? I worked from home. I didn't have an office outside of home for what year is this? 26, so probably till 21 or 2. And in the beginning, I felt like I was a failure because I was working out of my house and did not have an office. And then I learned that it was prudent, especially going through the housing downturn and different things. COVID, I learned that it was prudent not to have an office and the overhead of paying for it.
mm,
So what I did to try to do what Carmen does is I had a nameplate made for my office door that says executive errands on it so that I could literally shut the door when I walked out of here and pretend that it wasn't in my house so I couldn't go back to it. Um, Now I have better balance and I can work and not do that kind of thing. But we eventually did get an office, but I personally still don't work there
Yeah.
because I
I
like
did
the
the same thing.
flexibility. Yeah, I like the flexibility of being able to work when I want to. And after 20 years in business, you do have a little more freedom, and I'm very clear on what that puzzle picture is. So it really makes a difference. So the point of this today was to talk about how uh, what twisted really means in our twisted, bent, and exhausted podcast. We're going to talk about bent and exhausted also, but I think probably the next one we do will be another version of this where we can answer some questions about more questions about things that all business owners I think have in common. Um, I did send you some of those questions, but we're not going to get to them today. So I was thinking maybe we could do those next time. What do you think?
Okay. We can make that as an auxiliary episode.
Yeah, and then we'll just do bent, and then we'll do exhausted, so we can talk about what we mean when we say this is the Twisted, Bent, and Exhausted Entrepreneur Podcast. Because a lot of people love the title and they relate to it, but they don't really know what we mean by that. So I
Well,
thought this is a good start.
I think it's one of those things, when we talk about the topics we do, which all relate back to twisted, bent, and exhausted. I don't think we actually say, okay, this is tied to being twisted. This is tied to being bent. This is tied to be exhausted. It's almost like, no, we're not talking about the ingredients of the pizza. We're talking about it's a pizza, and
Right.
this is what it looks like. And so I think sometimes that can be a misunderstanding. And so it's almost like if you ever had deconstructed food, they put on a pretty cool display, and we don't realize that all these ingredients was in that salad we just ate, and you're like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't realize those raisins were in there, or that particular sunflower seed, or whatever, because it got lost in the salad. And so it sounds like people would be listening, and they're thinking, wow, the twisted and the bent and exhausted are getting lost in the salad, even though we've talked about it.
Right. And getting untwisted as a business owner, getting untwisted doesn't mean that you care less about your business, right? It means making less of a sacrifice to your business, because a lot of business owners feel like it's one constant sacrifice, which will lead into exhausted at some point. But it isn't a sacrifice. Being able to reframe your thinking and recognize when you're falling into these twisted traps can allow you to run a better business and be freer in the long run. And when you're happier and you're freer, your business will make more money. It just automatically does, right?
Totally.
You've seen it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
all right, that's all I got today. You gonna
That's it.
wrap up?
That's all the conversation I've got. That's it. I want to thank everybody for joining us for another episode of the Twisted, Bent, and Exhausted Entrepreneur Podcast. And we have deconstructed the Entrepreneur Podcast to Twisted, and we talked about Twisted today. If you found that this resonates and we've missed something, you said, hey, does this mean twisted? It may be one of those things where, maybe it does and we've missed it because there's a lot of different twists in there, because we're only sharing our experiences or our experiences with our customers that we've had with our customers with you. Please share it. Put it in the comments. Drop us a note and let us know. And then please join us. Please join us on the Twisted, Bent, and Exhausted podcast. Go ahead. She's got something to say. I'll stop.
So they share, like, tell people about it, because we want to get this out. This is all free business consulting advice. People pay thousands and thousands of dollars for this kind of advice. And there's no, we want to help you. We want to help you be successful.
Business can be very fun. It can also
Yes.
be very twisted, bent, and exhausting. But yeah, do it right, and take some notes, read it, listen to it again. Make sure you use my name in the comments of how much you appreciate my comments, and we'll see you next week on the Twisted, Bent, and Exhausted Entrepreneur Podcast. Leslie, as always, thank you so much. It was a joy. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.